Hello, my name is Javier Landazabal, and I'm performing my activity. This activity is called Unit 1, Step 1, Look into for this designing teaching material. My name is Javier Landazabal, and this activity is going to be presented to the tutor in charge that I don't know yet, the tutor. This course is called Materials Design for Face-to-Face Environment. The due date of the activity is February 14th. About the content, I developed the direction in questions. That's the first thing I'm showing you, and then the reference. So the direction in question, the first question is, what should English language teaching ELT materials have? So these materials should help students to reinforce the understanding of the language. Besides this, I would like to add that these materials should follow theories of language acquisition and development, principles of teaching, knowledge, and how the target language is actually used, the results of systematic observation and evaluation of materials in use. In addition, this activity should stimulate students to learn. That's probably the most important part of this is it is to stimulate students to learn, to make them to progress. Then we have expose the learners to language in authentic use. Help learners to pay attention to features of authentic input. Let me show you this a little bit bigger. Like this, better, like this. Okay. So help learners to pay attention to features of authentic input. Provide the learners with opportunities to use the target language to achieve communicative purposes. Provide opportunities for outcome feedback. Achieve the impact in the sense that they arouse and sustain the learner's curiosity and attention. According to the reading, only few authors are really guided by these principles in designing ELT materials. Okay, let's move on. Let's see what's next. Now the activity says like this. Point number 2, explain the main on the following question. Proposals for principal approaches to the development of ELT materials. So when talking about principles and approaches, Tollinson, during his career, mentioned something that I explained before, but additionally to this, he mentioned 6 principles. These principles are the principles of language acquisition. So let's see in detail. Principle number 1, for example, learners are exposed to a rich, meaningful, and comprehensible input of language in use. So it is suggested the activities make sure that the materials contain a lot of spoken and written tests. Make sure that the language the learners are exposed to is authentic and typically used. Make sure that the language input is contextualized. Make sure that the learners are exposed to sufficient samples of language. How can or when can we see these activities, or in what activities can we adapt these principles? Probably in tax-free activities. Now let's continue with principle number 2. In order for the learners to maximize their exposure to language in use, they need to be engaged, both effectively and cognitively, in the language experience. So in this case, it's very important prioritize the potential. For example, use a unit on a text. Let's see what the next page here. And okay, these activities can be performed, or this principle can be achieved, can be carried in speaking and reading based activities. Now let's see principle number 3. Principle number 3 says language learners who are positive about target language are much more likely to achieve communicative competence than those who do not. For this principle is suggested, make sure the tests and tasks are as interesting, relevant, and enjoyable as possible. This is probably the most important one of the suggestions for this activity, for this principle. When or how can we perform this principle? How can we carry on this principle in really based activities that the students may find interesting? Principle number 4. L2 language learners can benefit from using those mental resources which they typically utilize when acquiring and using their L1. So in here is very important to visualize. That's what it says here. Use activities which get learners to visualize. It is important for them to visualize, to see the differences. For example, how can we perform this principle? When we ask the students to visualize how was their day, that way we ask them to give us some detail. Okay, let's continue with principle number 5. Principle number 5. Language learners can benefit from noticing salient features of the input. For this principle is suggested, use an experimental approach. Okay, it's like, so make them to experience the language. So teamwork is really good for this principle. Principle number 6. Learners need opportunities to use language to try to achieve communicative purposes. So it's very important to guide the class in order to make them to believe they are able to speak. So suggested for this principle, provide many opportunities for the learners to produce language. That's probably the most important because if they feel they are learning, if they feel they can speak, is the most important for them and is very rewarding as well. The reference of this activity, the one suggested for the class, for the teacher, Richards, 2002, Theories of Teaching in Language Teaching, and Tollinson, 2007, Principles and Procedures of Materials Development for Language Learning. So thank you so much for watching.